Hi and welcome to another Rendaa Studios After Effects tutorial. I'm McKinsey Criswell and today we're going to be creating a lava design. So let's get started. So we'll start a new composition. You can do that by hitting this button down here. Composition, new composition, Command N. Ton of different ways to do it. Before we do that though, it should be noted I'm working in 32 bits per channel. That's going to allow us to have a little bit more leeway with the color that we're using. So as you can see, if we switch over to 8 bits per channel, or even at 16, we're not really getting the ability to push the colors as far as they were being pushed at 32, as you can see. So let's go ahead and just create a new composition at 32 bits per channel. We'll do 1080p. Okay. And we'll make this, what about like 15 seconds long? Okay. And then we'll call this render. Okay. And so now that we've got this nice new composition ready to work in, we're just going to put it off to the side and not worry about it for a little while. First thing, what we actually want to start by doing is taking this rock layer, dragging it into its own new composition. You can create a comp with the perfect pixels, with the size of a layer and or frame rate if it's a video, by just dragging it down to this button. And as you can see, we've got just a nice layer created with this, or a nice composition created with a rock texture layer added. So a couple of things we're going to want to do to this rock layer, a couple of edits we're going to make. So first thing I'm going to do is just some color correction. I'm going to go ahead and invert the layer. Okay, so we're basically just making it a little bit darker. It didn't look as good, kind of gray, so I tried to make it a black. Secondly, I'm just going to add like a hue, width, and saturation. And then I'm going to drop the saturation all the way down, just to lose any color fragments we might be picking up. We don't want any color in this layer. Having this layer perfectly black and white kind of helps accentuate the color that we do end up putting there. And then I'm going to grab a couple of curves effects. Okay. And what I'm going to do with these is I'm going to just drag down the color quite a bit. Seems a bit much. Let's see. Drag this up this way. A little bit there. Just kind of work it until it looks good. We might add another curve just to help fix that a little bit. Let's see. Alright, that looks pretty good. And then next we're going to add a shatter layer, or the shatter effect. Now this is a pretty old effect. It's been around in After Effects for a while, but it is very useful. If we look at our nice wireframe render here, you can see what it's doing is generating bricks and literally just shattering them, which is pretty simple but very helpful for a ton of different effects. So first thing we're going to want to do is change the view to render so that we can actually see what's going on. This is a pretty massive shatter. Okay, so let's do some work to hopefully make it a little bit more subtle. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is, as you can see, we're kind of shattering in the shape of bricks right now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the shape of the render to something called herringbone. And that's basically just going to rotate the bricks about 45 degrees. So we get futuristic bricks. I'm going to move the origin of the render kind of off towards the corner a little bit. Maybe somewhere around here. Okay, that's good. It's not making a huge difference, but I just kind of want the general direction of the bricks to be facing somewhere other than the center of the comp. It just looks a little better. We're going to leave the extrusion depth at 20. If you turn that up, that's basically the depth of the pieces that it's rendering. If we turn it up really high, you can start to see how much longer these get, but for now we're just going to leave it at 0.2. And now we're going to want to edit the force. Now the force is a bit problematic right now because it's basically just shattering out into a weird direction. And the problem with this is rarely ever what you actually want to use the effect for. This isn't the best 3D effect ever created, so it's very rare they would actually want to do this. So luckily they included some forces for us. We've got two different forces, and these are the forces acting upon the layer shattering it. So we got some controls to change these. So the first thing I'll do is just bring up the radius a lot, because as you can see right now it's shattering kind of a small circled area, and I'll just bring up the radius a lot, all the way up, why not? Stops at 5. And then I'm going to bring down the strength quite a bit. We don't want to go negative. That looks good. Okay, starting to get somewhere now. And then on the second force, I'll just set everything to 0 to make sure that we're not getting two different shatters. As you can see, the points of origin are coming from two different points, so we actually get two separate forces shattering the object. And with this particular design, it's much more desirable to just have one force acting upon this rather than multiple. Okay, and finally, to stop this from falling, what I'm going to do is come down to physics and just turn off gravity by setting it to 0. And now we have is just kind of a general outward movement of these pieces. If we let it go long enough, it will kind of move out in outward direction, but that's not what we're going to be doing with this. Okay, so now that we've got that set up, what we're going to go and do is drag this comp we created into its own new comp. So we're comping a comp, and what I want to do is only use a portion of this layer. And what I'm going to do, is right click, choose time, enable time remapping, and I'm just going to find a frame that I like to start with. Okay, come on. 3 seems too little. 14 seems too much. Let's do 4 anyways. And then I'll come to the end and just choose a frame to end on. And you might not even get a full second because it just separates so fast. But that's perfectly fine. Okay. That's good. Okay. So as you can see, it kind of moves outwards over the course of, what are we starting? 3 frames is what of that we're actually using. So it is. So at this point, in case you haven't already realized, you're not going to want to pre-render this comp right here. I know a lot of times people like to pre-render things to help speed up the render. That's a good trick, but it's not going to work here, because if you render out the comp we just created, you're going to only be rendering 3 frames. And instead of animating like it's doing here, since it's realizing, hey, we're only using 3 frames, and then it animates through those 3 frames and actually turns it into several hundred frames, what you're just going to do is at 3 random points in the comp, it's just going to switch to a different frame. So that's not the ideal situation, and you're not going to want to render this out. But other than that, pretty much free to do whatever you want with it. Alright, so what we're going to want to do now is go ahead and start to add our lava. So we're just dragging into the background of this comp. And you see we're already starting to get some nice looks with kind of the lava peeking out from underneath the rock. But let's see if we can help this out a little bit. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab Bevel Effect, Bevel Alpha, and I'm putting this on the rock layer to add a nice highlight to the rock, as you can see. And what I'll do is just make the edge thickness maybe like 1, pretty small, maybe even smaller than that if you want. And change the angle a bit. And then bring up the intensity. Okay, so we're just putting kind of a nice bevel on here. You can actually make it even smaller if you want. You can make the edge like 0.5. You just want to have like kind of a little bit of highlight on the edge here to help pull some color out. of the rock kind of help push the 3D illusion. Alright, and then we can start to animate the lava. So the first thing I'm going to do with the lava is just kind of help to hopefully push it a little bit out of the rocks, kind of help make it surface. I'm going to bring up the exposure quite a bit, maybe 2-ish, somewhere around there. You're just gonna want to push up the exposure until you start to leave the orange realm and push more into the yellow. You can see we started off kind of orange, now we're getting yellow. That's far enough. And then we're going to add a Turbulent Displace to add some movement underneath the rock, because it's rare that lava is not moving underneath the rock, I assume. Whoops. We want the Turbulent Displacement, not the turbulent noise. Okay, so displace type, keep it turbulent, and I'll go ahead and just set a keyframe on the evolution by holding down Option and clicking, and I'll type in an expression time times maybe like 2, and then we'll just keyframe the amount and or size of this a little bit to help it kind of look like it's shrinking and growing underneath the rock. Really add some life to it. So we'll bring up the amount quite a bit. Also the size just a little. And then we'll set some keyframes, click the stopwatches, drag to the end of the comp, and then just edit them a little bit. Bring up the amount just a little bit. If you go too crazy with it, it's just going to be moving and moving and moving, and it's going to be distracting from everything else. So that's not the ideal situation. And then we'll actually bring down the size back to like 100. And I'm having the lava shrink because when we do the final animation, we're actually going to be kind of panning out on the rock. So we're going to be zooming out on the rock in the final composition, but then, or zooming in on the rock in the final composition, and then the lava is going to be zooming out. So it's going to add a cool parallax in the end that you probably won't notice. So. And then finally what we're going to want to do is add an adjustment layer on top of all of this to just bring out the color in the lava. So I'm going to do Layer, New Solid, and then if you hit this button right here called Adjustment Layer, it'll make it an adjustment layer. And we're going to be correspondingly adding the glow effect. So that's exciting. Okay, so let's get started with this. You can see instantly things are blown a little out of proportion. So let's see if we can't fix this. Glow threshold I'm going to bring up to basically 100% so that only the pieces of the layer that are actually pure white are going to be glowing. And then the glow radius I'm going to bring up quite a bit. Let's see. Somewhere around 290, 300. Probably going to be good. And then the intensity I'm also going to bring up a lot, just with the lava. It's supposed to be intense. Okay, so this is a little bit crazy. That's alright. It's going to look pretty insane until we make some adjustments. The one thing we do want to do is kind of cut off the glow on these edges, because that's going to create an issue in the final comp. So if we just take this layer, the mask tool, and just draw kind of a mask around here, it's going to stop glowing after a point. And if we bring down these controls, we can kind of feather it. Okay. Alright, so this is looking pretty insane right now, but we're going to be fixing it momentarily with some layers. So I'm going to create I'm going to grab the text tool and create a new text layer. And we'll go ahead and use the text lava title. Oops. I think I spelled lava wrong. And then we'll just scale this up a little bit. I'm using a cool font called Futura PT. You can get this from Adobe Typekit if you don't have it, or you can probably find it on some on a black market font website. I'm sure those exist. And we'll just center up the text a little. Alright, and then I will do layer precompose to precompose a title holder. Okay. And just for the record, I don't know who came up with the idea to put titles in a new comp and edit them from there, but that was a brilliant idea, and thank you, whoever came up with that idea originally. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is just create a fill effect, and I'm going to turn it to a black color, and then I'm going to make, like 4 copies. Control B. Okay, I'll turn a couple of these off right now, and what I'll do first is just select the track mat and tell, and I'm going to go to the rock layer, and I'm going to use the alpha mat of title holder. I might be doing this incorrectly. Yes, I want the alpha inverted mat. Okay, so our glow is still looking pretty crazy, but as you can see, our title is kind of seeping through the design here now. And let's go ahead and add a couple of other things. First thing, I'm going to go ahead and just remove this fill effect from this layer, change the blending mode to something like multiply. Okay, and then it's basically multiplying nothing as the layer is white. But what I'm going to go ahead and do is right click, choose, oh, if I can get that menu to stay open long enough, we'll choose layer styles and inner shadow. Okay, so instantly we're kind of killing the effect a little bit, which is kind of the goal of this particular layer. So we'll turn up the opacity to 100%. We'll keep the distance, well, I should turn down the distance. Okay, and then I'm going to just bring up the size to hopefully kill this glow. Okay, make sure this is black. Alright, and as you can see, if we just kind of shut off this layer, you can see it's basically killing that glow that we created, which again was the goal of this, so successful. Alright, next we're going to turn on this layer, and I'll leave it black, and then do like outer glow, something, maybe just another bevel the edges. Okay, and you can see what's happening here. I'm just going to bring down the edge thickness a lot again. It always starts off with way too thick of an edge. And then I'll bring up the intensity a little bit and just kind of add the layer as with the add blending mode. And then I'll bring up the opacity about 60. Probably good. And this glow is just still a little bit too intense, so I might just bring up the radius a little bit maybe. Might help out. Might need a little bit more than that. Okay, maybe we might need to just bump this down. 4.5 maybe. Okay, we're getting there. And then finally, we're going to add our light ray. Now this is kind of just the fun part to kind of help further push the emphasis of the title. Whenever you get a design like this, it can be, you just want to make sure that your audience is reading what they're supposed to read, because your design is only going to be there for a couple of seconds, and you want to make sure you're using it appropriately. So that's kind of the point of the light ray here. Okay, so we'll go ahead and again take the fill layer off of these. I don't know why I added the fill to every single one of them before even looking. And then I'll grab a CC Radial Blur. Alright. I'm going to go ahead and use Fading Zoom. And then I'll bring up both the amount and the quality a little bit. So the amount we're going to want to make pretty big, 200 or so, good. And then the quality, of course, I just like to always push it to 100. mostly just for to feel better. Okay, and the render time is going to get pretty high whenever you start to use this light ray. So if we just take the render settings and change them from full to half, might have to change them to quarter a little bit later just to help it render a little faster. That's going to help out a lot. Okay, so next we'll add kind of like a blur. Fast blur looks good. And 9. Okay, that's good. I'm just kind of softening the glow a little bit. I'll actually change it to kind of a straight zoom instead of the fading one, just so that it really comes out all the way. And then we can just animate the center point. So we'll start off kind of over here. And we're actually going to start the animation somewhere around like a second. And then we'll keyframe this. We might scoot it over a little bit more. Keyframe the center. Let it go for a couple of seconds to highlight everything. And then drag this all the way over to the end. Alright, looks good. You just kind of pick a point when it's on a letter. You can see it's glowing nice. And then we'll change the blending mode to add. Help push it a little bit farther. And then what I'm going to go ahead and do is just hit U on the layer to bring up the keyframes, and then if I hold down Shift and hit T, I can bring up the opacity. So I don't like to use keyboard shortcuts, but the only other way to do that is to do the little click down triangles until you get where you want to go, which is quite cumbersome. So U, Shift T. And then what I'll do is just keyframe in this effect by just kind of clicking things. Eventually you'll hit the right buttons and get where you want to go. Alright. So this is the animation of the comp basically, and all we're going to do is drag this layer into our final render comp and just do a little bit more animation, and we'll be good to go actually. Okay, so now that we're in our render comp, we're just going to do a few more things to help get us where we want to go. I'm going to do some animation here, so I'll scale up the layer a bit, and then at the end just bring it back down to maybe like 98 or so. Okay, looks good. Again, I'm going to go ahead and change the render size to half instead of full, so that we're not getting too insane. Okay, and now let's just start to do some color correction, which is actually kind of the fun part. So we'll create a new solid. I hit Command Y to do that. I'll create an adjustment layer, and I'll go with curves and a hue saturation. It's a pretty good bet for color correcting. So the first thing, bring up the saturation a little bit. I really want to feel the orange here. Okay, and let's start to work on this a little bit. Whoops, let's reset that. We only want to edit just the main curve. We could give it an interesting look here. Maybe not, but alright, we're headed sort of right direction. Okay, and I might have made that color a little bit too intense there. Say 15 maybe. Alright, got a nice warm orange. And then finally I'll just create a new black solid, and I'm going to put a vignette on it. Okay. And the vignette is just going to help to make things darker. I'm going to change the mode to soft light, and then feather it out. Just feather it out until I feel satisfied. And this is just again going to help make things darker, nicer, cooler looking. So there we have it. All right, so that's a very interesting, intricate little lava design. As you can see, this is quite different. The color is quite different from the original. Just I did a different grade. But that is this tutorial. Hope you enjoyed it. Ton more at Rendaa Studios. Check out. See you next time.